Yeah, so my name's Daniel, and my wife Kim, we married when she was a junior in college. She graduated from UT Dallas, and then she went to medical school. So I was married to medical school. I walked through the world of medical school and through residency. She was a resident at Dallas Children's, and so I know the Parkland Children's Complex really well, UT Southwestern Complex really well. There's a lot of nights I would bring dinner to her, or when she was on surgery rotations as a third year, I would literally drive her down there and pick her up because I didn't want her driving because she was so exhausted. So I spent a lot of time at UT Southwestern, and I worked for an actuarial consulting firm in downtown Dallas. A lot of my work there was related to pension, retirement 401k, but a lot of pension plan stuff, post-retirement medical type things, disability, and a lot of my clients were people like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Alcatel Network Systems, Tenet Healthcare Corporation. These were companies that their pension, retirement system overall, things like that. I did a lot of work for those companies, and I learned a lot in that 10-year time period. And so I combine kind of that experience with also what it's like to come out of medical school, what it's like to deal with being a medical doctor, contracts, pay, benefits, how they work as a doctor as opposed to other employees, some of those kinds of things. So there may be some of that aspect that I might have some familiarity with in case you have a question about some of those things. I may or may not. So some stuff I may say, no, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know. All right, so I want to go through just, all of this comes, so I'm also a pastor. I've been a pastor for 21 years. And I come at this from a pastor's perspective and a financial person's perspective, which I think is important. I think everyone in here is a theologian, and everyone in here is a financial manager at some level. And so, Kim's not. That's not true. Kim really, seriously, we had an agreement early on. She didn't want to deal with it. She has no interest in it, and I'm glad. She just turns it over to me. She doesn't worry about it, which is perfect for us. It works well. I think in marriages, every marriage, you kind of have to work through how that dynamic will work. Some marriages share some of those responsibilities. One of them's paying the bills, while the other one's, some other aspects of investment or something like that. And our family, Kim, if I've written it down so if I die, she can find it. But other than that, she's got no idea where things are, that kind of thing. All right, so I'm gonna start out with just some biblical principles. First of all is an acknowledgement that God owns it all. And this is really hard because medical doctors, you get done with residency and there's usually a substantial change in the financial world for individuals. So you go from residency where you're making barely enough to pay rent and cover food, if that, you have this a lot of times sizable medical debt that is brewing in the background. Kim and I were able to avoid that because I was working as an actuary at the time. But most individuals from medical school graduate medical school with 50, 100,000 in debt, starting a residency, pulling down what is probably just enough to cover an apartment and food maybe. And anytime like the stand offers free food somewhere, you're like, yes. So Karen, do you have them empty their pockets before they leave because they got like brownies and sandwiches in there? Yeah. That's called good financial planning. Right? So in the process of all this, money can become a really fearful thing and can dominate. And just a reminder that God does own it all. And if you've taken on substantial debt for medical school, I would say it's the only degree where I would say it's justifiable at a certain level. If you are doing this to get your degree in underwater basket weaving or something like that, you're wasting money. There's a lot of people graduating from college with degrees that are basically useless. You have a unique situation in that unless you are just a terrible clinician, you have an opportunity to make, obviously 6 figures and up fairly quickly. And so it's the one thing where you can also get out of debt fairly quickly too if you handle it correctly. And so in the middle of all that, I would just remind you, God owns it all. And we can get panicked, we feel panic about it, and just realize God owns all of it. Second thing is that God knows our needs and promises to meet our needs. It's clear throughout the scripture. Jesus is like, consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds of the air. Solomon in all of his splendor wasn't as beautiful as the lilies of the field. And yet, the birds don't worry. The flowers aren't worried. God takes care of all of them. Are you not worth much more than these? It's an incredible comparison there where Jesus is like, if God's going to take care of the flowers and the birds, you're worth like infinitely more and he'll take care of your needs. So he promises to provide for our basic needs. That doesn't mean we can be foolish. That doesn't mean like, okay, well then I'm going to take all my money, put it on, 20 on the roulette table, and if God really cares about me, he'll make that win. That's not how that works. That's called being foolish. But assuming that we've practiced a reasonable life of wisdom, that God will take care of our needs. Number 3 is anxiety is a sin, even if your anxiety is about money. Now, you're medical people, and so as a pastor, I'm always reminding people that I'm not describing a medical condition of generalized anxiety, which is a real thing, where people are anxious, even if you can't, they could give you a reason, right? You have patients you probably come across like this. They feel anxious, and you know, what are you anxious about? They're like, they can't even tell you. That's not what I'm talking about. I think we know the difference between a medical condition and things that dominate our thinking. Things that have us tossing and turning in the bed at night while we're trying to plan the next 82 months of our life, and really we just need to get up the next day and deal with that. And so I'm talking about anxiety as in a biblical perspective, not a medical perspective. I have church members who have generalized anxiety, and they couldn't tell me pinpoint. It's nothing when they describe it to me that I can pinpoint and say this feels like a sin issue. I have other church members that they're describing to me as like, this is not a medical issue. You are so concerned about your credit card debt, you can't sleep right now. That falls in the category of biblical sin, I think. And so I think it's important as doctors, as medical people, to distinguish between those two, because you're going to have patients like this. So I'm not going to tell you how to practice medicine, because I don't know. But I'm just saying, as a pastor, I do think it's important to distinguish between the two. And you may run across a patient who does not need medical help, they need spiritual help over their anxiety. But you may also have another patient who needs medical help and not spiritual help over their anxiety, right? I think you've seen those. I know my wife has. Every decision in life, including decisions about money, is a spiritual decision. We can't say, spiritual decisions are about, the person I marry, or what I do with my free time, or whether I go to church or not, but even money is a spiritual decision. And what I don't want to see happen, I tell my college students this at DBU all the time, I don't want them to waste their life. And here they are, 18, 19, 20 years old, they have a whole life ahead of them, and my fear is that, not just that they'll waste money, but that they'll waste their life. They'll spend their life chasing after things that have no eternal value. And you can have eternal value while working a job as a medical person, and you can have a life of zero eternal value while also doing that. And there is an aspect of which the spiritual mindset of the individual at our work, at what we do with our money, how we spend our time, that can have, the two people that, if you were to watch them externally, seem to be doing very similar things, seem to be indistinguishable from the perspective of a human, looking at it from a human perspective. But if you were to see it from God's perspective, you'd see those two individuals are actually living very different lives. And so the way you use your money, and the way I use my money, it's a spiritual decision, how we spend our money. So just remember that eternity is impacted by the way you live this life. And I know there's this idea that's kind of rampant in evangelical circles is heaven is the same for every single person, and just all you got to do is get yourself over the threshold. And that's clearly not true. The biblical examples are replete where heaven is not the same experience for every single person. That there is a difference between those who live their lives sacrificially for the sake of the kingdom and for the sake of the gospel, and those who barely make it in. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, there's people who will, remember that whole story, remember that Paul describing this very picture thing? Okay, so I'm going to extrapolate a little bit. You die, you get to heaven, and there's this dump truck with your whole life, and it backs up, beep, 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 and then Simon Peter pulls the lever, and all this stuff comes falling out of the back of it, and then Simon Peter has a flamethrower, I'm convinced, because it says it's tested with fire, and he goes, and just, and then it burns up everything that is, probably dominates a lot of our life, that is trivial and insignificant, and it just burns up. But what's left, tested through fire, are the things that are eternal. And Paul says those things go in like a reward. And some people will only have their salvation. Like you just burn the entire thing down. There's nothing left. And so that's one, the book of Revelation is really clear that the believers are judged, evaluated by the things written in the book. You have Jesus describing the people with talent, right? 1 talent, 2, 5. And in fact, here, so what's the currency of heaven? So this is a question I've kind of got running through my mind. And the currency of heaven is described in that parable, because he says to the one who had 5, made 5 more, and he goes, this is the currency of heaven, ready? Enter into the joy of your master. So joy is the currency of heaven, and there's a joy difference based on how you live this life now. and I don't want you to waste your life. I don't want you to get to heaven and turn to me and go, wait, you were at Stan's house that night, you didn't tell me. And I'll feel bad about that. So now I've told you. And there's people I meet, there's a guy in Myanmar I just love. I go to Myanmar a lot, at least up until the coup, but the military coup, which is just awful. But there's a guy there who plays the keyboard at this church. We do pastors conferences there. About 400 of these Myanmar guys are just crazy, godly people. And there's one guy playing the keyboard, and he's been stoned and left for dead several times. This one village he's been trying to start a church in. And I saw on Facebook the other day, he's got the church going at a big children's event. No one knows his name. There's no placard in front of a building with his name on it like an American church. When we get to heaven, I'm going to turn to one of you and go, when that guy gets called first and his reward is off the chart, you just get like crazy off the chart and say, hey, I met him once in Myanmar. And I think the perception is that like American pastors are super spiritual. I guarantee most American pastors are going to be way, way down the pecking order on this. The people with massive reward are going to be people that have no one knows their name, church planters that are serving in the most incredibly difficult circumstances, medical doctors who have left everything here to go serve indigenous populations in like the Sudan or things like that. People who have taken great risks with their life. The biblical picture is that those individuals will receive an everlasting reward and will not regret the way they've lived their life. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. That way if we get to heaven and you're standing next to me toward the back, you can't blame me for it. Okay. All right. So also, just a reminder that God blesses the generous, and this doesn't mean He will make you wealthy. But I have found the general principle is that people that live with their hands open live with less anxiety and always have their needs provided for. And so, live with your hands open. Meaning, this is one reason not to take on massive debt, because you want to be flexible to be able to respond to needs. You want to be able to go, that's a $10,000 need right there with that orphanage and that situation, and if we don't do something, if they don't have clean drinking water, they are all going to have dysentery for the rest of their life. We're going to step in this. We're going to put a new filtration system in here. We're going to go do medical clinics there. We were in Myanmar. Last time we were in Myanmar, they had a polio outbreak in the boys' dorm, and just trying to address some of those kinds of things. And you want to have resources so you can go, polio outbreak, we got to get them vaccinated. We got to, those kind of things. So live in a way that you can live with your hands open. You won't shot at trying to build this eternal joy while ministering joyfully to other people. And so don't do it grudgingly, but like joyfully. Live with your hands open and happy when the opportunities come along. That's why as a pastor and as just someone who is around the medical profession where there's more income than, say, other professions, that you have a great opportunity to not live to your means, but well within your means that provides lots of margins to impact people. You can impact them by going, you can impact them by giving, both of those kinds of things. Kim herself has made a few trips into some, she's crazy. Yeah, she's crazy. She went to Haiti right after the earthquake in 2000, whatever that was, 2008. She's been to the Sudan four or five times, including the Nuba Mountains, where they were active bombing runs every day. She's lost her ever-loving mind. Myanmar 3 times. And so I think you guys have opportunities to do those kinds of things, and I would take your shot at them. You won't regret it. So, yeah, take your shot. All right, 5 basic principles. Any comments about the spiritual principles? All right. Now, let's talk practical, because the Bible is very practical, too, about money. You can read the book of Proverbs. There's also other places where the Bible is quite practical. Practical is, first of all, spend less than you make. I know it seems obvious. 78% of Americans spend more than they make in this growing credit card debt. In fact, because of the spike in gas prices and other basic inflational pressures right now, credit cards are now at risk, real risk. And I'm reading articles almost daily about people like Citibank and others who have large populations of credit card carriers, and they're quite nervous about this. There's a risk of massive default on credit card debt, and so this will put pressure through the rest of the system, which will create additional inflationary pressures. This is how this stuff works. Because if banks don't get paid, now there's inflationary pressure on them. Money gets cheaper, all those kinds of things. It puts a lot of pressure on the system. And one of the best things you can do is spend less you make. Because if there's an economic crisis and fallout, People who have little to no debt, who have some capital and have been wise with their housing and things like that, will be way less stressed out than people who are having houses foreclosed on and cars confiscated, that kind of thing. Spend less you make. Number 2, make sure you have $1,000 emergency cash. Okay, so car breaks down, hopefully you can get it fixed for less than $1,000. That hasn't been my experience lately. Car parts have gone way up, and lately you need a couple of grand to fix a car now. Tires are more expensive, everything. But at least $1,000 emergency cash. Refrigerator breaks, you need to get it repaired, try to fix it yourself. Here's the other thing, there are YouTube videos to fix anything. And my wife and I fixed we have a built-in stove, and we fixed it a year ago. She replaced the garbage disposal. She's like really good at plumbing, and I do the electrical. And I think it's a doctor thing. She's like really good at plumbing. So everything in the body is like plumbing of some sort, right? So blood goes round and round, right? What are the three rules of biochemistry, right? Oxygen is good, blood goes round and round, you gotta make pee, right? That's the biochemistry. It's all plumbing at some level, right? All right. Eliminate all consumer debt. Now, all consumer debt means every credit card. Now, I don't think it's a problem to have a credit card if you use it like I do. I use a credit card, pay it off every month, but I use it for travel and things like that, especially when I travel internationally. There's no way I'm using a debit card, which has direct access to your checking account. I don't recommend that. For things like travel, there's also reward points that you can benefit and stuff like that, but it is not worth a 19% interest rate. So it must be a situation where you're paying it off every month. Dave Ramsey would say, never ever use a credit card. I would say you can use them if you use them properly. There are some good uses for them. I think travel is the best example. There's no way I'm going to India, Myanmar, Thailand and pulling out my debit card. Other than getting cash out at the airport. Right, of an ATM at the airport. So other than at Myanmar, this ATM machine ate my ATM card, wouldn't give it back to me. And it was gonna be my source of cash for the entire trip, and it was the first machine I put my card in. So I was in a lot of trouble. So fortunately, the guy in India, Kim wired him money, and he handed me rupees when I got there, but yeah, but anyway, I don't like using the debit card if I'm on travel. Also online, I don't like it. I like credit cards online purchases. There is some protection with credit cards that you don't have if your debit card gets compromised. So be careful with that.
Okay,
yes.
So don't use debit cards online?
I would be careful with using debit cards. There's more protection on credit cards than there is on debit cards. You can challenge credit card expenses. Debit cards are harder to challenge because the cash has come out of the account and the bank can't get back to it. On credit cards, if it's a vendor, a lot of times the vendor will have to make it right, or the credit card will be like, you can't use our card anymore. It's a little harder with debit cards. I'm not saying never use it. I think grocery stores and things like that are fine. So my son Austin uses it for everything. I mean, that's how he pays for everything. He goes to the chiropractor using debit card, buys Muya he's a student at DBU, and so that's fine, but I'd just be careful about like big online purchases. I'd be careful about travel expenses like airline tickets and things like that. I would probably slide towards credit cards on that. All right, save 3 to 6 months expenses. So this is in order. Spend less than you make, get $1,000 emergency cash. Number 3, you gotta get rid of all your credit card debt. And I would say card debt, credit card debt. Okay, so this is the hard part. What do you do with the student loan? Okay, because I mean that's the big one for medical trained people, right? So what do you do with that? I think I'd be aggressive with it as well. I think I would try to be pretty aggressive with it. Now what I might do is try to get the 3 to 6 months expenses saved up and then go after my medical school debt. I think I'd probably go in that order for medical school debt. I would treat it almost like a mortgage, where I'd be aggressive with it, but I would probably pay any of this kind of revolving debt. And you know what I mean by this, right? Chase credit card, JC Penney, is that still a thing? They still in business?
Barely.
Are they okay?
Not by us.
No, not by okay. Amazon card, you might get Kohl's, right? Kohl's is a thing, right? Okay, all right. So, look, I don't go in a store. Amazon, if I'm gonna buy something, I just tell Amazon to, ship it here because I don't really want to store. But anything that has like that kind of revolving debt, you should pay all of that off. And clear it completely. Once you've done all that, I would then, and that includes car loans, I would get the car loans paid off. Here's the thing about car loans. The moment you pay it off, usually your auto insurance will go down. Do you know this? Your auto insurance company does not like you paying on a loan on it. I paid off Kim's car back, I don't know, in the summer, and immediately my auto insurance went down $50 a month just for paying it off. And what happens is they send a title to us and they tell the insurance company it's paid off, and immediately our rate dropped. So it was the only note I had on cars for me and Kim, and it was like, let's just pay it off. I sold the rental house, and so we paid it off. And then, I didn't know it was going to save me $50 a month on auto insurance. So I would say do that. And the reason our auto insurance is really expensive, for the record, I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old male children in my home, who one of which is not uncommon for me to check Life 360 and see triple digits. To which I keep telling him, dude, you cannot go 100 miles an hour on I-30. So he's gonna get a ticket. He's only gotten one so far, and so I hammered him on that the other day. I'm like, you gotta give me the keys. He lost the truck for a couple of days. I was like, can't do that. First of all, you're gonna burn the engine up too, so it's gonna cost us a bunch of money getting it fixed. But I'm like, when you're 19, you're indestructible, right? And so yeah. All right, then remember, in all this, the one thing is don't stop giving, though. It's like, when are we gonna get out of debt? And then get really tight with your money. Like, we gotta get this debt. Just stay generous, okay? Whatever you do, stay generous. All right, any questions about that? These steps, I would do them in this order. Get yourself to spending less than you make. Get $1,000 cash. Get rid of the revolving debt, including car payments, all credit card payments. I would treat mortgage and your medical school debt as after you get the 3 to 6 months expenses set back. That way, if you get laid off or something happens in your job, or someone has a health crisis, or you have a parent get sick and you need to take 3 months to go take care of them, Family Medical Leave Act or something like that, you have a way to do that. You want to be in a place to do that, okay? And then live, again, with your hands open. Be generous.
How would you, we got like a few med students that are about to graduate, and they're going to go from spending money to do what they do to now making money to do what they do.
Right.
It's not like tons.
Right.
So how do you recommend them to go through those first few months of residency? Now they have an income, but they have to figure out, rent and food and everything.
Yeah, so a lot of times with the medical school debt loans, they won't start forcing payment for 6 months, if I remember correctly. So a lot of times you get done June 30, residency programs start July 1, or within that range, right? Isn't that usually the kind of rule of thumb, July 1 or August 1 or something like that? And now you're on this 3-year plan in residency, or 4-year or 5, depending on what program you're in. They probably will not start saying you need to start making payment until December 31 or January 1. It's usually the way medical school debt works. Now, I don't know. I
think it's been on pause.
What's that?
Is it not still paused?
It's pause. Yeah. Did they extend that though?
August.
To August. Okay, but you would have been on pause.
I think should still 6 months grace.
Yeah, you would have been on pause anyway, because you have 6 months after you graduate from medical school before you have to start making payments. So what I would say on that is that's probably a good thing. What I would do is get to where you're going. This is the other thing. You usually have a big move. In our case, Kim stayed here, which was great because we had a house and I had a really good job, and I was like, that would have been hard to do. And so we got to stay here, but a lot of times people are moving. In fact, sometimes people want to move. You want to go to a different program for residency, those kinds of things. What I do is get yourself there, get your housing settled, find out what insurance is going to be like there, what's, all those kinds of things, get all those kinds of things worked out. After you kind of figure that out, you're 2 or 3 months into it, I get the emergency cash setback, and then I would start going after that. I would go after revolving debt first. And usually what I found with medical students graduating, school debt's not the only debt. Usually there's a car payment in there somewhere, or there's a credit card somewhere. I would go after those first and make the minimum payment on the student loan and go aggressively after everything else. Once those are paid off, then I would ramp up my student loan payments.
What are interest rates like these days?
Well, we live in a very tense world right now, and the Fed Reserve has said they were going to raise it 7 times this year. But today they showed GDP dropped 1.4%, which will spook the Fed. because they could induce stagflation, which is a stagnant economy with spiraling inflation. They are in between a rock and a hard place. But if they raise it 7 times between now and the end of the year, credit card rates are all going to go up. Student loans will go up. Student loans are tied to prime. And so medical school notes are tied to prime lending rate. If they raise the prime lending rate 7 times, like it goes up 3%. Let's just talk through what the 2 to 3%. Let's just talk through the implication. You have $100,000 debt. That's $3,000 more a year just from them making that interest rate change. That's pretty expensive. And so it could be, I would have paid it off in 12 years. Now it's 17 years. That kind of thing. So I don't know what's going to happen. There's a very interesting kind of bubble that may pop at some point. S&P 500, if that pops, the interest rate market may go way up. And for medical students with medical school debt, that's a very scary alternative, is a rising prime interest rate, which is what, since the federal government took over student loans, that's what it's tied to, is prime lending rate. And that's the one that the Fed messes with when they meet their Fed meetings 8 times a year. So that's a concern. But if it were me, see, that will affect credit cards too, though. If 12.9 is your current credit card rate, they raise that rate 7 times, it will be 14.9. And I would go after those credit cards first. We'll talk through order which to pay them off here. Let's see, do I give you, I don't. I should have.
This is jumping a little bit ahead. Would you invest even while you're paying off your
Okay.
debt?
Yeah, that's a good question. The answer is if I work for an employer that's matching contributions, you have to do that. You cannot leave money on the table. Let's suppose it's 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of pay. Okay, then I would say you cannot leave 3% of your compensation on the table. You must put that 6% back. You have to take the match. Some of you, if you're going to residency, the only problem there is that you may not vest quickly enough, but it still would be some money. You at least get, it used to be, it would be 20% increase in vesting every year. So you'd be at least 60% vested by the time you're done with 3 years of residency. That's what it was for Kim, at least. And so of course you put that money in, you take the match.
At least here, by the time you finish your residency, you're able to move that account to somewhere else or wherever else.
Not just your money, but also the match.
They don't match.
They don't match?
They don't match. Not until you go to 5 years. You have to be employed.
Is that a UT?
That's a UT thing.
Okay.
You can't have to be
When Kim was at Dallas Children's,
Children's is a little different.
yeah, when Kim was at Dallas Children's, they did a match, but she only got 60% of the match when she finished because she only worked 3 years.
Actually, more Parkland. Parkland
Yeah,
employees.
because UT Southwestern matches like they're
UT
like some
matches well.
ridiculous 8% something.
But most residents
all different.
are employed by Parkland.
Yeah.
And so employment at Parkland, you need 5 years vested. You need to work for 5 years at Parkland before they start matching.
Yeah. Okay. So that being said, in terms of investing, the greatest investment you could do would be to pay off a 14% credit card. If I said to you, you have a guaranteed 14% return, guaranteed, no risk that you would never lose it, you would say, where do I sign up for that? The answer is you sign up for that by paying off your 14% credit card debt. You know, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I would look at, is the best return on your investment would be to get those things paid off. Also, you guys are young, so I'm just going to say this to you. In addition to whatever retirement matching you have, I would get a Roth IRA. Roth IRAs are really, really good for your age. I'm getting a little bit past where that's quite as beneficial. But Roth IRAs, you put it in after-tax money, and all the interest that you earn is tax-free. And at your age, if it doubles every, you know the rule 70, right? Whatever the interest rate return is, divide that interest rate into 70, and that tells you how often it will double. So if 7% return, 7 into 70 is 10, that means you'll double your money every 10 years. And that means 10, 20, 30, 40 years later, so 2, 4, 8, 16 times. So let's take $10,000, 16-fold increase. That's a pretty substantial amount of tax-free run-up. And so for you guys, I'd go after the Roth IRA and as a supplement to whatever your retirement is. Check rules on this. Some of you guys may make enough income if you're in a actual employment situation. There are caps on these kinds of things, so you have to check. You can't go out and open a Roth IRA if you're making a certain amount of money and you're getting a certain amount of retirement from your employer. There's caps on these things. Okay, so let's talk through strategy on this debt for just a second. Okay, if it were, oh yeah, go ahead.
Could I ask a question about the $1,000 in emergency cash?
Yeah.
Do you mean like physical cash or just like cash in the bank.
Easily accessible cash,
Easily
right?
accessible,
Yeah. So in other words, you don't want to say, "Well, I've got $1,000. It's in these baseball cards I bought, and I can sell them on eBay." It's like, no, you can't. And if the economy collapses, no one's buying baseball cards. It needs to be liquidable assets. So yeah.
Yeah, not NFTs.
Not bitcoins. Yeah, not bitcoins. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say liquidable assets. It could be something like. Some people, like on the 6-month thing, they might have an IRA that rolls over every 3 months. That's fine. Stuff like that. That's fair. That's fairly liquidable too. Minor penalty for early withdrawal, but not significant. And something like that would be fine too. But something that's fairly liquidable, that you can go into a bank and say, "I need money right now." So yeah, let's talk through debt payment strategy. Okay, for just a second. What I would do, there's 2 approaches, and I'll share both of them with you. First of all, it depends on how many of these you have. So the first thing you need to do is get out a piece of paper and sit down with all your debts. But I'll have people come to me and go, "We're in trouble." And I'll say, they'll tell me on the phone. I'll say, "Bring everything." And so they have a shoebox and they dump it out on my table or on my desk, and I'm like, okay, I'm like trying to figure this out, and I'm going, okay, what do you have? We're trying to list them all out, So there's Discover, you have a Chase card, and then we talk a little bit later, and they're like, "Oh no, that's the other Chase card." I'm like, "Oh, wait, where's the other one?" And we start listing it all out, and I'm always surprised at how unaware they actually are of the. They're aware of each one of them, but they're unaware of like a global picture of it. And so I would say, get yourself a global picture of this. Get all those debts listed, and here's the way I would do them. I would list them in descending order of the size of the debt, and then I would make sure you include the interest rate on this list, okay? And what I would do is I would go after the highest interest rate first, because that's the investment. That's where your return on money comes from. Now, Dave Ramsey says he would go after the smallest balance first because he thinks there's a psychological thing to paying something off. Like, oh, we got rid of one. What I would do is tape it to a fridge in your home. And as you pay down on it, I would make enough space on it, and I get a red pen, like cross through that thing, write the new amount. And I would make it pretty prominent, And then for cooking dinner, rice and some, black beans and, water. If you want some flavor, get those little Propel packs. Mix them up. The knockoff brand at Kroger instead of Coca-Cola. You get the knockoff brand or something. It tastes mostly the same. You just use your imagination. And I would get real aggressive about those kinds of things. I would. In terms of exercise, cancel the gym membership, go for a walk. In terms of, there's a lot of subscription things that we have on phones. I would cancel all those, unless you just absolutely have to have them. And I would get really, really purposeful with it. And I'd get that list, and I would start marking through it. Like, we're going to pay the minimum. What you're going to do, you're going to pay them. You can't miss a payment. You're going to pay the minimum on every single one. And then find the highest interest rate one and go, I'm paying $1,000 on that sucker, even though we only have to pay $100, and try to pay that down, because that's the best return on your investment. If you knew you could make 12%, right now, if I said you could make 12% on $10,000, you'd be like, that sounds like a really good plan. That's the best way to make 12%. So what you got to do is know what your debts are, and be able to list them out. Okay, so I would go after the highest interest rate one. Now, if you have a smaller one, I probably would clear a smaller one. I might split it between the two. If you have one that's like, it's $800, this one's just $800, the others are all big, I'm gonna put $500 on that, and I'm gonna pay this one off, because it will have the effect of improving your credit score. Now, let's talk through credit scores for just a second. So, this is the other thing you've got to do, all right? There is a government passed a law about 12 years ago that every person gets a free annual credit report. Okay, be careful. There's lots of websites. You want to go make sure you go to the actual U.S. government sponsored one. Okay, and really it's just a link to the TransUnion, Equifax, and TRW. But once a year you can go there. And what I would do is not go do all three at one time. In January do one, and then July do another one, because you can do one a year with each one of them. So there's no need to run all three of them. They're going to say pretty much the same thing. The only difference might be TRW is reporting for like AT&T, and if you didn't pay your cell phone bill, they might report to them. But in terms of the big ones, all the credit cards, mortgage, credit card debts, auto, any of that would all be reported to all three of them. those big items like that. So every single person in this room should run that report today. All right, so I'll tell you what happened to me and Kim. She's in medical school. We decided to buy a house and go to buy a house. And you know how the FAFSA stuff works? You know, you fill out that stuff. And Kim had filled that out. And right about the time the second year of medical school the application came out, FAFSA sent the completed form, filled out, and you were just supposed to fix the things that were different. Well, someone forwarded our mail right about the time that hit, which means they got everything. And by the time they're done, they had opened 20 accounts in Kim's name. They had gotten a driver's license with her name and number with their picture on it. They got her birth certificate. And the only thing that saved us was that we bought a house right as this was breaking. So this person's about 2 months into stealing my wife's identity. So then I'm on the phone with all of them, canceling these all out. The person had also enrolled at UTA and University of North Texas. So my wife, you talk about industrious. She is a second-year medical student, a full-time student at UTA, and a full-time student at North Texas. So you think you're working hard at school. So that's this individual was from Singapore. What had happened is she had flunked out. Her dad was going to cut her off. She didn't want to go back home. Her dad was ticked off at her. I think her family actually had resources, but she didn't want to go back home. She was in trouble, and the U.S. was kicking her out because she failed, right? They were going to revoke her student visa. And she decided, she got with some friends, and they're like, how can I stay? And she decided to become Kim Sweet. And she stole my wife's identity, but we caught it pretty early. And she went into a Chase. And since we were strong, Chase, we'd had a long relationship with Chase. I went in Chase and told them the whole story and said, she's got an account at your bank. And they go, well, she goes to this Dallas office all the time, so she went in and they arrested her. Wow. Dallas Police Department, though, are not good. So they go, look, there's nothing we can charge her for. We're just going to release her. I'm like, dude, I told you she opened 20 accounts. No. But this is what he said. He goes, just so you know, she's also got a student ID for UTA. So I had a math professor at UTA, who's a good friend of mine. I call her and say, hey, can you see if my wife's a student? She pulls up my wife. And I go, look, this lady's stolen my wife's identity. UTA police officer arrests the lady. She gets convicted on 4 counts of fraud. She goes to jail and then deported. But the impact on us was that if we had not caught that, you're talking about massive, terrible ramifications for it. Okay. Now here's the other thing to do in addition to I would go run an annual credit report. They'll email it to you. You don't have to print anything like that. I would run one. Run TRW tonight or Equifax or one of those. The other thing is a lot of credit cards have a credit score for you in the card, and you can just open that and look at it. And a lot of times it will tell you what your debts are and all that. And if you see something on there that looks funny, you got to deal with it immediately. So it took us about 8 months to clear her stuff up. Challenging. This is not my wife's account. This was something else. And so it took us a while to get it all cleaned up, but we eventually got it cleaned up. That's why I'd say you should once a year at least run that. And then if you have an app with your bank where you can check that periodically, I would definitely look at it because you want to make sure someone's not out there running a secondary ID with your name, your ID, your social, and buying cars and stuff like that. So anyway. All right, so run an annual credit report. You would be surprised at how many things are impacted by your credit score. Auto insurance is substantially higher. You can get charged, there's a lot of things that can show up in this regard. Interest rates will be higher. You go to buy a mortgage, you go to buy a house. Instead of paying 4%, you're going to pay 6%. You go, what's that? It's only 2%. 2% on a $200,000 house is a lot of money. You don't want to donate $4,000 to the mortgage company. So a year, so those kinds of things have huge impact on you. Also, it'll affect you with mortgages. There's this thing called PMI, payment insurance. It's a total fraud. And when the housing crisis in 2007, when we crashed in 2007, it used to be mortgage insurance was like $30 a month and that kind of thing. Well, now it's like $180 a month. And it's a total ripoff. It's a donation to the mortgage company just for playing. And it's not deductible. It's not, it's terrible. So you don't want to pay PMI. Now, the way you avoid PMI is 80% equity or 20% equity or more. And so I'll give you an example of how these things work out. You got to think through this. So suppose you own a house, okay? I had this family come to me, they dumped all this stuff on the table, including the mortgage, and I pulled the mortgage thing out, and they're paying $180 a month in PMI. And I went, you bought this house 2 years ago. They go, yeah. I went, well, the market's gone up. I said, for $325, you can have the house reappraised. You'll show that you've got the 20% equity. This will go away. They're like, what? I said, for $325. I said, if you don't, I said, I did a calculation real quick to when they would be at 20% by default, you know, with the bank, 7 more years. So I said, you can donate $1,500 a year or $1,200 a year to the mortgage company for the next 7 years, or for $325, the whole thing will go away. They had it appraised. They were at 25% equity. Sent the appraisal to the mortgage company. PMI went away. So things like that, you got to know these kinds of things. If you don't, you'll regret it. Okay, so be wise about those kinds of things. Buying a house is really, really good thing to do. It's hard if you're going to move to be a resident. That's hard, right? Because you don't know. Do you plan on staying in this place? Let's suppose you matched and you're going to go to Kansas City or something like that. So they become a Royals fan. That's cool. They have a waterfall in the outfield, so that's cool. But you go to Kansas City, but like if you said long term, I really want to live in Chicago, or I really want to come back to Dallas. I just want to do residency somewhere else. That's hard. I don't know that I'm buying a house there because there's a lot of basic fees that come with every purchase of a house. And every time you buy 3 houses, you've essentially bought 4 because there's just so many basic fees that come with it. So I would say buying a house is a really, really good idea. And that is one debt that I think is a healthy debt unless you make a bad purchase. So, okay, so when it comes to debt, I would get these revolving debts done. I would try to get a mortgage at some point, buy a house. Buying a house is really good for you. I would, on the mortgage, here's the rule of thumb on mortgages though, okay? Ready? So this is really important. 1.5 times your annual salary or less. Okay? They'll loan you 3 times your annual salary, and they plan on you never buying furniture, going out to dinner, going on a vacation, giving any money away. What they have in mind is you will enjoy your life sitting on the floor in the middle of the living room, eating beans and rice. And man, I love our new house, don't you? I love sitting on the floor. That's their plan for you. And so they love it because for them, the person that loans you the money, they get a commission based on the size of the mortgage. And so if they loan you a $300,000 loan versus a $150,000 home, they double their money right into their pocket. So the mortgage lending agent wants you to buy the $300,000 house, and I'm telling you buy the $150,000 house. 3 reasons why. Number 1 is that nothing will damage your credit worse than if you can't make a mortgage payment. And if you're barely at the edge and then you lose your job or something happens and you default on mortgage, that will destroy your credit for 7 years. You're not getting out from that one. You miss a credit card payment, that's not good, but you can work your way out of that. You miss a mortgage, these the reporting agencies absolutely will destroy you with that. And then now your auto insurance just went up $100 a month just because you missed a mortgage payment. So that's number 1, there's a risk factor to it. Number 2 to this is that you want to do other things with your money. You want to be able to give it away, you want to be able to save for retirement, all those kind of things. And then number 3, this is really important, okay? First-time homes are great investments because after you're ready to move to your next home, do not sell it, rent it. Flip that thing. Kim and I we had 2 rentals. We now are down to 1. I had another one at one point too, which I sold, but the rental I just sold, I paid $120 for it, sold it for $240 7 years later. The renters paid all the monthly payments, and so we made $120,000 on it. And those kinds of things I think make really good investments. And you could actually hold on to it beyond that, and you just monetize the rentals, right? Eventually pay that mortgage off. You've got a flow of income. It's part of your retirement. You have 2 or 3 of those things. If you don't want to be a landlord, don't do it. But that's not a bad way to handle it. Buy a house that's within your range. And the reason you want to buy it less expensive is there's a couple of reasons there. Those are easier to rent. The $300,000 house is harder to rent than a $150,000 house. A lot more market available for $150,000 house rental. The second thing is that if you lose your job, the risk of defaulting on that rental mortgage and your regular mortgage goes up, right? If they're lower, you have a better chance of surviving. But we had a time where we didn't have renters for a while, for a couple of months. And you don't want to be in a spot where it's like, oh, we're bankrupt. We're going to bounce checks here. So you want to get homes that are reasonable like that. So buy a house 1.5 times your annual income. it's like the best way to not make yourself poor. Also, avoid, if you can, an automobile that costs like a house. It's a bad investment. I know Teslas look cool. The self-driving Tesla looks cool, but 60 grand, 70 grand, it's probably not a good idea. Unless you got the money. If you have the money, it's no big deal. But I'm just saying, if you're like, we're gonna borrow $72,000 to buy this Tesla, along with the mortgage we have, plus our medical school debt, plus these 20 credit card debts, I'd be like, we're buying us a 10-year-old Toyota Camry. We're gonna keep that thing going. Those kind of things. This is the time to buy the Nissan Altima, 10 years old, and from eBay Motors, and do that kind of thing. So automobiles will make you poor. Buying too much house will make you poor. Automobiles will make you poor. These are two things that can really induce a lot of poverty quickly. Credit card debt, too much mortgage, and too much car will make people poor really quickly. So strategy: get your credit, you get all your debts out, start going after them. Get your $1,000 emergency cash. Once you paid all those debts off, revolving debts off, we're going for 3 to 6 months expenses. Somewhere in there, if you get a chance to buy a home, that's a good thing. But don't go buy a home that's 3 times your annual income. Buy something that's definitely reasonable for you. Find a nice little neighborhood, smaller house. Trust me, it's less to clean, cheaper to air condition. It's Texas. It's hard. It's expensive. You want to air condition 1,400 square feet, not 4,200 square feet. Yeah. Yes.
So, what if you don't need or want a house?
It's totally fine. Yeah. Again, this is a stage of life thing. So, if some, I think I had this conversations when we were at Southwestern. I did this presentation, and there were a few people finishing residency. And I think it's not a bad idea to go and make a home purchase. Once you're settled, you're like, I know I'm going to do residency in Plano or whatever it is, and you're like, there's a lower expense neighborhood in Plano, which is hard to find. I bet houses up there are double what they are in Mansfield. But you find a house up there, it's like, this is about 2 times annual income and 1.5 times, that kind of thing, whatever you're going to do. And then that kind of purchase makes sense. But if you're like, I never want to do that, renting is fine.
Some of us are not far away from being single attendings, like no wife, no kids, nothing like
Sure.
that. So to invest in all of that space, I understand it's a good investment, but I'm not going to use it. I need a 1-bedroom and a kitchen, and that's it.
That minimalist approach is not a bad idea. No, that's not. No, that's fine. Everyone has to kind of think through that. I think you might be surprised though, also of the joys of home ownership. It's a pain. I hate mowing the yard, but there is something about you have your own space and it's your home, and it's different. I don't know. Kim and I lived in apartments while she was in medical school and all that, and Eddie Van Halen lived above us. Did you know that? I didn't know he lived in Dallas. I think it was him because of the guitar playing, but it might have been someone else. But I remember a few times taking the broom and going, Eddie, it's 3 a.m. He'd come home from his Friday night gig to practice. Like, Eddie, you do need practice, but it's not 3 a.m. So there are some things about apartment living that can be a little frustrating, and there is some beauty to home ownership. There's equity you're building up. There's also a little bit of inflation protection. So let me just say just one other benefit. Apartment complex rentals have gone up pretty dramatically. Apartment that was once $1,200 a month is now $2,200 a month in Mansfield, and that's just 5 years later. If you have a mortgage, property insurance will go up some. You'll see some incremental increase for property insurance and property taxes, but the mortgage will stay flat. There's a bit of inflation guard there, unless you got a variable rate note, which please don't. Yeah. So that's the other thing. You do get some inflation protection there that you wouldn't get renting an apartment. So if you could buy a 1,500 square foot, nice little 0-lot home somewhere, very little maintenance and stuff like that, townhome, things like that. Townhomes and duplexes, though, they will only do 15-year mortgages, just so your heads up on that. You cannot get a 30-year mortgage on a townhome or a 0-lot house. A lot of times they'll tell you 15 years or shorter on those. Standard single dwelling home, that is, you can get a 30-year on that. So, yes?
Would you recommend becoming a landlord if you're not going to be there? So like, let's say you buy a house and then you move away to, another city, would you recommend keeping
Sure.
that place to rent it?
Yeah, so there are companies that will manage it for you, and you pay them $150 a month, and they manage it. They deal with all the issues. They have their own repair people, and you can still do it. I don't know if you should or shouldn't, but I'm just saying you can. So I don't know that if I thought for sure I was going to move, whether I would do that or not, because there is a little bit of hassle factor. But there are management companies. I've had some church members who wind up move into Connecticut, and they hold on to their property here and they rented it out, but they couldn't manage it, so they just turned it over to this management company. And I know one guy, he's got 4 properties and they are all under management. He didn't think anything about it. They collect. If the person doesn't pay them, they boot them out. You don't even have to evict them. They handle all that. And that's kind of nice. Then you don't have to be a mean landlord or whatever. You can just you let someone else be mean. So there are some ways to do that. It's expensive. You lose a little bit of your profit doing that, but you can still generate some net equity doing that. Yeah. So there are ways to manage like that.
Do they find the renters for you?
They do. Yeah. And they'll boot them out if they're bad, and they'll keep their security deposit if they damage the house, and they'll go in there and clean it up for the next renter. And yeah, I mean, I mean, it's not a bad thing. Yeah.
I heard about a 5-year rule previously where it's not worthwhile to own a house unless you're going to be there for at least 5 years. Is that still?
I think that's probably true unless you're going to flip it as a rental, in which case then it's not a bad investment. Yeah. So yeah, again, you have to be of the mindset to deal with this. Even if you use a company to manage this thing, a management company, it's still pain. There's still aspects of it that's painful, and there's still some risk. What if the market turns really south? You can't find a renter, But generally speaking, I think real estate is nice. It's one commodity they're not making any more of, right? There's a limited amount of real estate, there's a limited amount of land in places where people want to live. And generally speaking, real estate will almost always go up at some level. It's a great inflation-proof investment. It's one reason why we held on to the second half. We have a second rental house that I think I could have sold for. We paid $150. I think it would sell for $300,000, and we thought about selling it. We owe like $100 on it, so it's some substantial cash that would come to us. But I've got a renter in the house that pays me on like the 28th of the month before for the next month, Zells me the money. If there's a repair, they go, hey, the water heater's out, but my husband can fix it. If you pay for the water heater, we'll do the repair, stuff like that. And so they've been great. And so if you have the right rental situation, it's a good inflation-proof investment, because if inflation doubles in 10 years, that means that house is $600,000, and by then we'd owe maybe $50. So now you're talking about some pretty sizable return, and you might not get that on the market if inflation's that high. Yeah. Yes.
With the market as it is right now, I keep hearing like, is there like a bubble? Is it gonna burst? Is
So,
it still reasonable?
Yeah. Bubbles are things if you have a ton of money in the market.
Okay.
Bubbles are not a thing. So dollar cost averaging will work by you just putting your 401k, 403b monies in every month. It's called dollar cost averaging. As it goes down, you're still buying in, and it goes back up, you'll reap the return. If I were you guys, I wouldn't even think about it. I'd put it in there. I'd do, half of it in the S&P 500, maybe 25%. I might do some nice.
Sorry, no, I meant housing.
Huh?
Housing. Should we still buy a house in this market?
Oh.
Out of the seller's market for a while?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about buying into the stock market. Yeah.
What's her question?
Her question is, should in this market that we're in right now, is buying a house make sense? Yeah, it's
reading about a housing bubble where they think people are overpaying because
They are, and
they're bidding
yeah.
for houses, and
Sure.
then you essentially put more money into a house that's not potentially worth that.
Right. What if the bubble happens? 2007, a lot of people were licking their wounds from that. I actually bought the rent house I just described. That's when I bought it. Was when that thing crashed. The people were desperate to get out of it. And that's actually when we bought the house Kim and I live in. It crashed. We bought that house for $184. It's now would sell for $400. So the market was at a kind of lull, and there was one house we made a bid on at $235. I saw that house sold recently for like $580. It's like, man. So Yeah, so there's some risk there, but real estate is a buy and hold situation. You asked about the 5 years. The real estate is a buy and hold situation. The real thing is that if someone's paying, if a renter's paying it, if the housing market goes up, the pricing goes up, they'll cover that price difference. So that's your protection if the market goes up and you got this property. What if you buy and it goes down? Property taxes go down, things like that. Yes.
So, Dr. Green's wife is actually a realtor here
Uh-huh.
in Dallas.
Yeah.
And she's been helping attendings find homes and stuff. I'm sure you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. It's yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I think your sheet is absolutely perfect. It's got great advice on there. And it depends on your specialty. If you're gonna pick a specialty, you're gonna stay in one spot for a long time, then you invest a certain way. Emergency medicine, we change jobs every 7 years. So for us in emergency medicine, you never get a 30-year loan. You always get a 15-year loan.
Yeah.
Because you don't have enough equity, that's cash value built up in your home on a 30-year note. So kind of depending on your specialty, there can be a little bit of variation, and you need a financial advisor to help you with that. Like, are you gonna actually live in this house for 15 years? It's like, yeah, I think may live here for 30 years. It's like, okay, great, get a 30-year loan. So there are different ways to look at the investment. And then I was joking with Stan that the only thing not on this sheet that even as Christians we need to know, and that is, just have one spouse. That's like the biggest expense you will ever go through.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
gonna destroy you.
Yeah.
And this, believe it or not, this goes for women and men in medicine. Women are big targets. You'll have people trying to convince you you're happily married. They'll try to convince you, I am so much better for you than your current husband or your current wife. And you go down this path, and before you know it, your marriage is blown up, and you've got no money anymore. So that's another thing, the Bible talks about Joseph fleeing from Pharaoh's or Potiphar's wife,
Yeah.
and he ran naked out of his garment. There are times in your career where you'll get approached by different people, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm married. It's time to flee the scene. So
Yeah.
just tuck that away in your memory and realize there are certain times, as Mama said, nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
That is still true even when you're 50 years old. So
Yeah.
that never goes either.
That's
Again, I think the sheet is excellent. It's great advice.
Yeah.
Good stuff to follow.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, on that, like I heard, I think it was Dave Ramsey who said this. There's some things that will make you poor. That's one, like divorce. Another thing that makes you poor is drinking and smoking will make you poor. Your health insurance is more expensive. You're going to get more sick. You're going to get sicker. Plus, cigarettes are incredibly expensive. Things like that. Those are the kinds of things that make you poor. You guys are all smart enough to avoid those kinds of things, I would hope. But yeah, there's some things. But definitely, multiple marriages will definitely drain the resources really quickly. But not only that, like you said, it's not just the money that will drain you on those. There's a lot else lost in that, as you said. Yeah, like Joseph kept his integrity, and that's probably worth more even than the financial benefit, like you were alluding to. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that reminder. That's good. Yeah, it's interesting. A good moral, godly life will save you a lot. Yeah. So
Daniel, there are several couples that are about to have children that were not able to come tonight, but they will be looking forward to watching the video. Do you have any?
yeah, my advice is don't have kids if you want money. Oh my goodness. You can have kids or money. You can't have both. Man, they'll bankrupt you. My kids are draining me. Oh my goodness, they're so stinking expensive. I thought they were expensive when they're like 3 or 4. You get them in the 19, 20, 21 age, I was like, they're about to graduate. Things will get better. They are so expensive. Austin's at DBU, and there's $3,000 a month for that stupid degree of his. Anyway, I say that. He's getting a degree in cybersecurity, so it's probably a pretty good, not a bad occupation. But Michael's about to start at TCS, and that's like $2,000 a month. So in the fall, I'm out $5,000 a month for these two knuckleheads. And what am I going to get in return? You get kind of the grunt in the kitchen for hello, like, and they drink all the milk, and They don't do the dishes, and yeah, and sometimes they park where I want to park. I mean, I don't know. And look, it's funny. I love my kids, and I spend a ton of time with Michael, especially, but even Austin. I go to lunch with him every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at DVU. So I love hanging out with them. But I will tell you, kids will they'll bankrupt you. They'll make you poor because you want good for them, and it's the ultimate transfer of wealth is from parents to their kids, especially in the realm of college degrees.
Well, several of them already have kids on the way, so they.
Perfect.
Should they start
Celebrate.
saving for college now?
Yeah, exactly. Start saving for college. Now, there actually are some pretty good college savings plans. I wouldn't think that's a bad idea. Actually, it's kind of interesting. The 2 rental properties, that was our plan, was that they would pay for our kids' college.
Oh.
And it kind of worked out. We sold that last one last summer, and that helped kind of cover all of a couple years worth of stuff for Austin. And he'll graduate in December of 2023, so he's about 18 months from graduating. And I think he's got a really good shot to have a good job. He's already talking to some potential employers. I think he's going to wind up working for Homeland Security because of his cybersecurity background. That's cool. I think it's a good job. I think he'd be a good government employee. Actually, I think that's better for him than private industry. But yeah, kids will break you. And it's the ultimate asset transfer or wealth transfer is to transfer from parents to their kids' college. That's it, right? And some of you actually benefited from that. You may have had parents that paid for your college, right? And it's the ultimate wealth transfer is mom and dad writing checks for school and helping you get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I forwarded you an email with those questions.
I saw one was about disability insurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look through here real quick and just make sure. Oh, auto insurance. It is cheaper if you own it. I already told you that. If you own the car outright, it is cheaper. If it's old, then liability only. So if you have a 12-year-old car and you have a $500 deductible for repairs, that doesn't make sense because you get an accident, it's going to get totaled out. And if it gets totaled out, you go, I can still drive it. I go, great, get some duct tape that trunk down and have at it. So someone ran into me once in this older car I was driving this van, and they hit me on I-20. And I went in, they just messed the bumper up. I went into the auto repair place and it's a $1,200, so we're gonna write you a check for $1,200. I said, okay, wait, before you write me the $1,200 check, just so we know, I'm not spending it to fix the bumper. I'm gonna go do something else with it. And so as long as we're clear on this, they go, it's your money, your loss, you do whatever you want. I went, wow, I'm gonna drive on I-20 every day. And at $1,200 a pop, I figured, I could really generate some big income. But anyway. So yeah, so I didn't care what happened to that van. I didn't care it had a dented bumper on it. I didn't care, right? Zip ties work great, duct tape, price it out. Compare auto insurance, Progressive, Geico. Price it out. Check. Make sure you're paying the best price. Only use reputable companies though. Like don't get the cheap one and it's like some AWA. Joe's Auto Insurance and Bar. Like that's probably you don't want that. That's a bad guy. Don't use him. His fajitas are terrific. It's like okay, that's not. You don't buy from him, right? Just buy the fajitas from him. Okay, yeah. So and then also lawsuits are a huge risk. Okay, so let's talk through this. Everyone in this room should have a liability umbrella policy. It will make life incredibly expensive because your auto insurance will go up, your homeowner's insurance will go up, but you on a witness stand in a civil suit because you ran a red light and hit some old lady with your car, you are a mark because you're a doctor and they will absolutely eat you for breakfast. Kim and I are both at risk. Mean old pastor ran over that person, or my wife, she's a pediatrician and she hit a kid on her bike, and then next thing you know, you're sitting at a $2 million lawsuit. The kid needs 4 surgeries, repair the broken femur, and now all of a sudden it's like you're going to be out a lot of money. I'm not talking about medical liability. I'm not even talking about anything to do with your auto insurance. I'm talking about the risk of civil suit because you're a doctor and you should have known better. And there's a bunch of